All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the immunity decision that the Supreme Court made just the other day. It was a 6-3 decision along ideological lines in which it was determined that, yes, a president or former president of the United States is shielded from legal repercussions for official acts from within office. So if you, for example, do something and policy-wise, something regarding war. That could be an unfortunate part, by the way, depending on how the appeals court that it got punted to decides to rule, etc. That you can't face any legal repercussions for it. And the idea is basically that if a person is in office and they do break the law, it's the responsibility of Congress to impeach them and the Senate to remove them from office. They have to have an official proceeding legally by Congress against them. This is in comport to the Constitution. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's a fairly obvious decision that they were going to make. And liberals right now are absolutely outraged. They're mortified because they're misinterpreting the decision. They didn't read the whole thing, it seems. What this does is it punts decision-making on what constitutes an official act to the lower courts, which means you'll have a federal patchwork, I suppose, at a different appeals level. Which court gets to decide what constitutes an official versus unofficial act? In Trump's case, unfortunately, it has to be the D.C. Court of Appeals on the Jack Smith case specifically. But they're obviously adversarial. They're clearly going to rule against him. What they're going to do is find that in any of these appeals courts, actually, that are pertinent to, the cases against Trump, they're going to find against him and say, well, no, these payments weren't an official act, for example. The documents, that's not an official act. That's, he took his documents home and it's still unacceptable. They'll find against him. What you're going to end up with, therefore, is appeals. They won't be decided until after the general election. This is effectually a cock block of the cases against Trump that are being used to persecute him. The Supreme Court just defended Donald Trump in his ability to actually wage an election, which is really, really good. I mean, you're still going to get sentencing and stuff like that, I guess, on July 11th, although now things are a little bit on the up in the air side. Donald Trump is going to fight it legally, and it's going to be a little bit chaotic. He still has to do the legal fight thing, though, so keep in mind he still has to be in court on a regular basis and all of the other shit he has to go through. All this does is shield presidents from being endlessly persecuted by political adversaries pertinent to a judicial system and a congressional system that's already been implemented in the first place. It was already the case that presidents of the United States were not prosecuted anyway. The whole idea is that if they do something wrong, Congress gets involved. They impeach. The House impeaches, which means they're making a formal declaration, usually partisan, by the way, that they believe that the president broke the law, did something wrong, did something for which they should be legitimately removed. The Senate then takes a vote, and then by supermajority, they can remove a president from office. It'd be interesting. I don't know, does the vice president act as a tiebreaker if it's really close in the impeachment proceedings? I'm not actually sure about that one. I'll have to look it up. Trump, therefore, has a limited immunity that's almost inapplicable to these situations. I mean, you're going to have endless appeal anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, situation is basically the same. Liberals are acting like this makes the president a king. No, it doesn't. It just means that you can't persecute people endlessly and that there's already a system for removing them from office should they do something terribly wrong. By the way, and keep this in mind, there's a difference between a little ouchie boo-boo sort of bad doing and literally shooting someone on Fifth Avenue or something like that. That's hyperbole, basically. Liberals are now acting like Donald Trump has total immunity for anything that he does at any time because he's been a former president. Biden basically came out and effectively said the same thing. He gave a very terse speech in which he blasts the decision and then wanders off, doesn't want to answer questions, probably because half of them would be about the debate instead of, about immunity. That would have been very funny, and he wanted to avoid that particular specter. Sotomayor dissented. She wrote the dissent. She was literally crying about the decision. Literally, not figuratively, literally crying about the decision. But you should know better, because you're punting this to lower courts to decide what constitutes an official act anyway. A president should not have to they shouldn't have to, when they get into office, they should not have to walk on eggshells the entire time. I mean, we're supposed to have three co-equal branches of government. So you have Congress, the legislature, and that's the House and the Senate. You have the judiciary, so federal courts, SCOTUS, etc. And then you have the presidency and the governors and stuff like that, the executive capacity. They're supposed to be effectively co-equal. What we ended up with Trump was a situation where he's not being treated as a co-equal, even though he was the chief executive of the United States. The courts effectively just cock-blocked congressional supremacists more than anything else. This means that Congress has to get involved. Stop being partisan. If you really think that a president has done something terrible, then nail them with impeachment. You have to get involved. The lower courts, meanwhile, then are going to be able to put limits on what this immunity even applies to. It's a victory for Trump, but only in a very small way. I don't think people realize how meaningless the decision is actually going to be with regards to the persecution of Donald Trump specifically. Again, this gets punted back down to the lower courts. They have to make that decision. SCOTUS didn't just say, well, here's a list of things that would be official acts, and here's a list of things that wouldn't be official acts. It's going to have to be decided on a case-by-case basis, probably now in perpetuity, because now we've opened the can of worms within which the judicial system can be used by any public official to prosecute a former president of the United States and to persecute them in so doing for any reason that they should deem fit. That's about all. Peace out.